thank you all for being here. It is an honor and a privilege for me to get the opportunity to speak with people about homelessness and the types of people who happen to become homeless and what we do at Out of the Cold, the shelter, and then the type of people who benefit from the program. And I was happy to hear that I could kind of tie in a little of my story into it, because I tend to do that anyway. And I had even made like a little reminder for myself to like get back on track, Lee. You know, they want to hear about the shelter. So I'm happy always to share my story. And the reason why I'm so happy, I'll just get right into it, is because I am a product of people who frequent Out of the Cold and shelters like it. I am the direct result of people like you who took a moment to care about somebody who doesn't have as much as you have, or somebody that's less fortunate, and shared whatever it was, $1, a word, a meal, an extra pair of pants, or an old coat that you couldn't use anymore. I am the result of that moment of love that you shared, because it was people like you that took a moment to shed some love on me when I had thought that everybody in my life was gone. In fact, I had pushed everybody in my life away, and the only people left to help me survive were people like you, who chose to care about somebody that didn't care about themselves or didn't have anybody to do that. And at the time, I was never able to say thank you to the magnitude that I felt at that time to those people, those little old ladies, or people who stopped along the way and say, here, you know, have a meal. And, you know, I'd eat and, you know, and I'd get a little life that day, but that little lady would walk away and she'd be gone from my life, you know, and she would be gone. And years went by, and I woke up, I'm awake, I'm alive now, and every day I get to say thank you to that little old lady, or, you know, that person that stopped and helped me. So this is an opportunity again, you know what I mean, to say thank you to those people that shouldn't really have cared about me, had no reason to care about me, except that they were people who had a little more, decided to care. So I'm the type of person that goes to Out of the Cold, and there's many, many others. Out of the Cold, let me just let you guys know a little bit about it before I get way, way off track. It started in 2011. This person who had been frequently homeless out here in this community for a long, long time froze to death in Bellefonte. And the local churches got together and created a board and decided that they weren't going to let that happen anymore. And every 2 weeks, a different church would sponsor the homeless in the area. They'd open up the doors, and they'd open up the basement like one of these rooms, line it up with cots, and sweet people who probably had made good choices throughout their whole lives and had never really been experienced to people who had made bad choices, had to sit up at night and watch over these people who, you know, some of them have drunk, some of them are coming off of different drugs, some of them hadn't been medicated properly in years, so they have psychosis and mental health issues, and some people just downright hadn't chosen to participate in any of their life experience. They just had checked out of life. So you have these little old ladies, in my mind, I'm thinking, little old ladies sitting up having to watch over these people at night, you know what I mean, and wondering what they're going to do. And so out of that, in 2011, grew this organization called Out of the Cold now. And, you know, now they're able to employ people, you know, have a payroll, and I'm an employee there. And they reach people now way more than they could then. At that time, you people were only allowed to come in overnight. And in the morning, you had to get up, you had to pack up everything that you came with, and figure your life out until 7 o'clock again when they open the doors and let people come in to sleep. And nowadays, we have a day shelter that's open 24 hours a day. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. And at that time, it was only during the winter months. So throughout the rest of the year, people had to fend for themselves. And now we're able to provide services for people throughout the year, hours a day. And even under extreme circumstances like cold blue, when the feels like temperature drops below 25 degrees, we can open the doors, and people who haven't actually had the opportunity to sit down with a housing case manager and go through an intake process still is allowed to come in, grab a cot, and get out of the cold just until the weather is, at least the county decides, is at least warm enough where a person wouldn't freeze to death if they happen to stay outside. So I got introduced to Out of the Cold in 2022. I had been, like Cricket mentioned, I had been to this area some years before. I had come out to do some work, and when I left, I thought that was the work that I had come out to do. Lo and behold, we fast forward some years later, and I'm back here, and I'm finding that this actually was the work that I was called out here to do. I came to Out of the Cold as a guest. I stayed there for a month, and at the time, the conditions were a little bit different there. There was very little structure. It was a low barrier shelter, so any and everybody could come in, and people weren't really being held accountable for themselves. Sweet people who had taken time to volunteer time and services out of their day were left to take care of people who had chosen to, for whatever reason, not take care of themselves. And luckily at the time when I came through there, Jordan Veneziano was just coming in as the director, and she came in with fresh ideas on how the program should look. Nowadays, the program is structured where people come in, they have to go through an intake process, and then in order to get an overnight bed, you have to be willing to participate in gaining your independence again, whatever that looks like. And many people come in with many different barriers. Some people may have been on drugs and alcohol for years. They need to get off the drugs in order to gain their independence. So we will try to encourage them to seek detox and a rehabilitation program, and then offer them an overnight bed and give them enough time to gather the resources that they need in order to gain their independence again. Some people come in with mental health issues that haven't been addressed or haven't even been diagnosed for years, and so we'll try to get them on track and do a soft handoff to some of the local organizations in the area like Oasis, or some even the mental hospital, the Meadows up on 45, just to get them regulated and stable, and then invite them back if they complete the program properly. And they'll have a bed there, and they'll be able to get on track and gain independent living at some point. Some people are just too old. They're waiting for Social Security. And there's a gap between the time that you stop working and the time that you can start getting benefits. Or people have Social Security disability where they just can't work for physical or mental health reasons, but there's a process in starting that application and actually getting approved. And that process usually involves a denial first, which takes about 2 years just to get to them saying no the first time before you can even get a second appeal to get. So where do you stay? Where do you live? If you get a job that is enough to afford to pay for your living, then you don't need SSI and disability, so you don't get. So what is a person to do? They can only work 20 hours a week in the eyes of Social Security disability, so you can't afford to live anywhere for 20 hours a week. So we provide places for them to stay until they can get approved for their Social Security, and that has happened. I've seen that happen. One of the greatest things I think about Out of the Cold that attracted me to Out of the Cold and made me want to become an employee and use my gifts here is the very first thing I noticed is that at Out of the Cold, we've never considered or referred to our guests as clients, residents, or anything other than guests. And that was something that it struck me because I have been in many, many shelters. I've been homeless for a long time, and I've been in a lot of places I've never been referred to as a guest. It was always a resident, a client, a POS, anything other than a client or anything other than a guest. And I think that goes a long way in rebuilding people's self-esteem and the tools that they're going to need to build the new habits or relearn the old habits that they forgot in order to take the blue pill is a little analogy that I use for anybody that's ever saw the Matrix movie. You had a choice. You stay out in the fog and you live life, wild and free with no responsibilities and no showers and no courtesies, or you take the blue pill and you come on this side and you go to work and you pay for your own responsibilities and you build relationships with people who are doing the same thing. And every day we're faced with people who we have to encourage to make the choice, one or the other. And I feel like our job as shelter coordinators and housing managers is to help people make that decision. Not everyone chooses the blue pill. Some people have made it up in their mind that they don't want to pay taxes, they don't want to live in a brick and mortar house, they don't want to succumb or accept the level of society that we all have accepted, where you pay your taxes, you say excuse me when you bump into someone, you say good morning, and you say good night. They have chosen to live in the wild. They don't want to live anywhere except on the street. We even provide a space for those people. We let them come in and take a shower. They can get a rest if they need to. They can get a bite to eat. They can even get a word of encouragement. They can hear a nice song. You know, they can talk to Lee or to or to Kelsey or to Shah. But at 8 o'clock in the evening, when we close the day shelter, they're allowed to go on and fend for themselves. And those people, they have the right to do that. And we let them do that. You know, you don't have to take the blue pill. You can stay with the red pill and live your freedom. I'm one who chose the blue pill. For 15 years of my life, I lived on the street. I lived underground. I did not want to pay taxes. I thought you all were fools. Like, why would you go to work for 40 hours and then before you even get paid, somebody has already dug in, right? And then with what you're left with, you got to pay for water, you got to pay for electric, I thought you were nuts. Like, why would anybody do that? Why would anybody spend 12 years in school and then pay all of this money to go to school again? And I just thought it was beyond me. You know, I thought that my way of life and my understanding was as far as I was going to get. And when I thought about people in Center County and State College and Happy Valley, it was the land of milk and honey. I thought that dollar bills grew on trees. Yeah, that there was always rainbows and sunshine. And most importantly, the biggest lie I thought is that you people didn't care about people who didn't have as much as you had. And of course, I thought you had everything. And I didn't think that you cared. And then I got here to Out of the Cold. And I watched with my own eyes all day long people that look like you coming in with cases of food, all of these bags of clothing, and I'm like, what? But she looks like she hasn't made a wrong decision her entire life. Like, you know, she looks like she goes to church, she pays her taxes, she ate her vitamins, she said her prayers. Why is she caring about me? Because I put myself, why is she caring about me, who has made all bad choices my entire life and has pushed everybody who should care about me away? And here you are showing up again with this hot meal that you chose to cook for me. Changed my life. Changed my life. So you all are really the backbone behind Out of the Cold. It's regular Joe Schmo community, John and Jane Does. Sure, we get a small contribution from the borough, but we're not federally funded. So I know a lot of people were concerned when we heard about the new organization coming in and a lot of the new executive orders that were dropping down. That won't affect Out of the Cold because we don't rely on federal funding at all. So the thing that we do will continue to happen as long as people like you continue to do what you do. We get that small contribution from the borough, but mainly we run off of the great grant writing skills of Jordan, our executive director, and her ability to coordinate and nurture community relationships with community organizations and businesses all around. And then the everyday people who just show up. We have businesses throughout town who are just regular donors, no matter what. They have signed up to be regular contributors, and they have made a commitment to make sure that the doors stay open, that the lights stay on. That's how we run. And through that little person, that guy who was nameless to the people in 2011, nobody knew who he was, and very few people really even saw him. He was just a little nobody. That this great organization now stands because of the life that was lost that day. So, you know, the people who probably knew him probably, you know, didn't think that his life was going to amount to much of anything. You know, they probably written him off like I know a lot of people had written me off. you know, before I turned 30. But here, his life means something. It changed my life, put me on a new trajectory, and I've watched it change lives in the 3 years that I've been working there. I've watched a guy come home from jail, his wife was in rehab, and the kids were scattered abroad throughout the system. And they were determined to work hard to get their kids back. And he came in around June, she came in maybe a month or and a half or so after. And by Christmas, they were in their own place, roof over their head, and had all three of their children back. In fact, they even had a friend of the oldest child come in, and they were able to have Christmas in their own home with all their babies back. You know, and that was because Out of the Cold was there, where all the other organizations said either we're full, or we don't do couples, or you're not from this area, whatever excuses they heard. And they had CYS breathing down their necks like, we're not giving you your kids until you have a roof over your head and you can show that you can take care of them. Where could they go? They came to Out of the Cold, and I got to watch them have a Christmas for their kids. You know what I mean? And there was a woman who was just written off by society. She walked around, she wandered around, and everyone thought she was on drugs. She wasn't. She has a physical handicap that mimics a person who may be under the influence of drugs. So everybody continued to write her off. She came Out of the Cold. She was there at Out of the Cold when I got there. And this woman, to this day, every either Thursday or Sunday, has made a commitment to come back and just see the people Out of the Cold, maybe volunteer, maybe cook a little something. But she's the sweetest person in the world. And you would never would have thought it. Like it's just some crazy old lady that's wandering around the street, but all that she needed was a place to call home for a while, just for a while, so that she could get it on track. And that's what I think about when I think about the people who are homeless, people like myself. I think about the contribution that was missing during those 15 years that I chose to check out of society, and how great the world, or at least the people in my life, how great their lives would have been had they been able to experience me, the full me, that you all get to experience now, or the people in my life get to experience now, and how great the world could be with all of those homeless people who are missing. Maybe that's what's wrong with our society. Maybe that's why things are not exactly the way they should be, because of those missing contributions, or those broken pieces of society that are just scattered about, waiting to be loved back into society. Sorry. So, told you. So, listen. But I get passionate about it because really, it was just the love of a stranger that, and I think this is what this organization is. It's just the love of strangers that is what's needed and what we provide. It gets people back to where they belong, and I think if we can keep doing that, if we can just keep the doors open for people like me, then the world will get a little bit better a time, one person at a time. But you all have been great. You've been a great and attentive audience, and if I talk any longer, I'm going to start testifying about it. So thank you all for all your attention. And yes, if you have questions, fire them away. Fire them away. I'm ready to go.
So do you often have a situation where you're completely filled and you can't handle people coming in?
Unfortunately, yes. We have to refer them to outside or surrounding area shelters. We right now we're not at capacity, but yes, that happens, and it's usually during the colder months. People decide to come in when it gets cold. The reality of their situation sets in. During the summer months, if you have a drug or alcohol problem, you don't really care because you can sleep outside. You don't necessarily have to worry about it. But in the colder months, Mother Winter bites, and it'll run you inside. So the census swells, and we have to turn people away. Most of the time, though, the people that we have to turn away are people with children, people under the age of 8, that have someone under the age of 18. It's the hardest phone call that I have to give or get, is to tell somebody I'm sorry, because those are the people who need it the most. And a mother with a kid, they hate to feel that a child is going to be outside in the cold. But unfortunately, we don't service anyone under the age of 18. So we have to refer them to places like Center Safe for women who are escaping domestic relationships. Day-to-day functions. I'm a great person for that because I start people's day. So generally, I get in at 6:30. So we usually allow our overnight guests to sleep until 9 a.m. Or at least the sleeping dorm is open until 9 a.m. We expect guests to be up and ready to lock the dorm at 9 a.m. They get up, they can have breakfast. Usually a community member like yourselves will have agreed to donate breakfast, so they'll have dropped it off the night before. And a staff member like myself, or usually me, I'll start the oven, I'll warm up breakfast, or I'll bring it out, or what have you. People will get up around 9. And on most weekdays, there's nothing to do early in the morning. We're changing that now, but up until now, nothing to do early in the morning until lunchtime. And then usually around 4 is when the business side of it shuts down, so the housing case managers tend to leave, and there's only shelter coordinators or maybe overnight observers on hand, or maybe a volunteer or two. People who have volunteered to provide the meals usually show up around 6 or 7. I know it says 7 to 9 on the website, but during the colder months, we open the dorms earlier because it gets darker earlier, so we usually try to have dinner around 5 or 6. And usually a community member will have prepared it at home and bring it in, and sometimes they'll agree to stay and host, meaning serve the meal, or they'll just drop it off and then we'll have a staff member or a volunteer serve. We used to just let the guests just go right in, and we found that some people were left without a meal, or some people would choose just not to eat because they weren't sure that everyone was being as clean as they needed to be when handling food, so people would just choose not to eat. So we saw that, we decided to have someone, a host, serve the meal, or a staff member only touch the food. We have a chore list, so everyone who has an overnight bed is responsible for a particular household chore, and one of those chores is to help out with the meal. So after, say yourself, for instance, will come in and help serve the meal, then they would get the containers for the leftovers, put everything in, date it, label it, and put it in one of the 3 refrigerators that we have in the building. For Saturdays and Sundays, when we usually don't get a volunteer for the meal, then we'll pull out the leftovers and we'll use them. That's how usually the meal goes and the day goes. Certain days, like on Mondays, we have our house meeting where we'll go over rules, we'll give people affirmations, the people who have shown progress throughout the week. We try to always end on a positive note, and at that time we'll change the chores for, so that it gets breaks up the monotony. Also, we'll pick a guest of the week, and the guest of the week is the person who has shown the most progress or the biggest turnaround in those 7 days. They get to skate through the week without a chore. They get like 1 or 2 free passes from me. Like, I'm kind of known as like the general around there, or the warden, or the CEO, or there are a couple of other monikers they throw around. But so they may do something, and I'll say, okay, that's your 1 pass. They get like a couple of free passes, but usually the guests aspire to do that mainly because you don't have to do a chore for a week, and you may get to stay in a little bit past 9, or come on, Lee, I'm guest of the week. All right, you're using it, so they aspire to do that. But usually, at least in the colder months, guests are ready to shut down around dinner, so they'll go around and they'll do their chore. They know that the staff member that's on duty is going to come around at 8 o'clock to make sure that the chore looks standard. So they'll try to check in, get their chore done and checked in, so that the dorms will be unlocked and they can just go right to bed and start the next day. They are required to meet with a housing case manager once a week, and usually they'll set goals and they'll expect to be met during that week. Some people's goals will be to get at least 3 interviews, not just say that you've applied, but actually have 3 interviews during the following week. So like they'll expect to have come back with those interviews, or they may be expected to get their ID. Some people come in, they don't have any ID at all, or reach out and get benefits like welfare, to get their medical turned on so that they can get a PCP here. So they'll go over those things during their house management meeting, and during the week they'll have to work on those, and then When they come back and meet again, they'll expect it to have made some progress in those. And those are the things that they look for when they consider guests to move on to the next step in our program, which is our transitional housing. So a person will have come from the street and know nothing about State College or Center County and say, I need help. And whatever their barriers were, we'll try to identify them and get them on the road to working towards them. As soon as they gain an income and show stability, then we'll consider them for one of our transitional houses. And out of the code, leases several throughout the county, and we can put individuals in them, and opposed to paying rent to an actual landlord, they'll pay rent to the organization. That way, something should happen, you know what I mean? They haven't really found the good traction yet. They have a year to figure that out. So if you lose your job, or you relapse and go back on drugs, or you get off your medication and you can't afford to pay rent, you won't necessarily get thrown out on the cold, you know, back out on the street. But, you know, out of the code can work with an individual and try to get them back on track so that they don't end up back homeless again. And hopefully during that year, they'll have some traction, they'll have some stability, and have a habit of paying bills on time and keeping their place clean and presentable. And then they can move on to an independent and full-on lease with an actual landlord. That's the goal for Out of the Cold. My personal goal in it is to turn each and every person who comes through there needing help and feels like they don't have anywhere to go and doesn't know what they want to do with their lives, to turn them into me, a person like me who will come back and work. And I feel like a person who has slept there in the building, or who has been homeless and comes back into work, has a bit of an insight that can, you know, sift through all the navigating waters that you have to sift through when trying to help a person identify their barriers to homelessness and be willing to address them and move forward. So the more people I feel who have been homeless and want to do this type of work, the better. I think our biggest need now in this area is there's a bridge between when a person sees us and a person can actually gain independent living where they stay. So Out of the Cold is just a tiny, tiny building, you know, that we've had since 2020. It's really small. We can only house maybe 20 people tops. And then our 4 or 5 units that we have off-site. But we need other buildings. We need a place where we can put those people who haven't yet reached the level of development where they can be in their own place, but they can't stay in the shelter either. You know, what do we do with them until they're able to be developed enough to maintain their own? And then who do we get to teach them those developmental skills again? So that's kind of where the gap is. And Out of the Cold is forced to try to put all those hats on at any different moment. You have to be a psychiatrist, you have to play a police officer, you have to play big brother, you have to play grandma, you know, a big auntie, you know, and just let somebody lie their head on your bosom and shed the tears. So that's a lot of hats for, you know, people who probably just got in it because, you know, they cared and they just want to help somebody. And then they realize, wow, it's a lot of help that's needed. So my hat always goes off to people who choose to do this, to people who choose to figure out how they can help, and who, you know, are always looking like, what more can I do? What can I learn? How can I be of assistance? You know, I think this is the only way that we'll ever be able to even scratch the surface of this huge problem of homelessness. I myself didn't think people were homeless in Center County. I know there's a bunch of people who still don't know that there's even a homeless population around here. I meet people every day, they're like, really? And I felt the same way. I had no idea. So I appreciate it when people take the time to figure out more, and I always hope that I ignited at least a little flame in someone to go out and tell a friend, hey, you know what? They're doing some stuff over there. Let's see what we can do. There's so many things that can be done. For me, it was people who took the time to come with whatever gift that it was. Some people were good at knitting and they just showed up with hats and scarves. Some people are good at cooking. Some people are good at art. Some people are good at music. We have space throughout our day for people who have nowhere to go and nothing to do, just begging for their minds to be fed with something other than the junk that it's been fed with up until they got out of the cold. And it's my job to fill that. So I need help in doing that. I have my own little ideas in what I do, and we do a couple of things, but there's always room for more. We've had people, some of you very ones, Jim is one, Karen is another one, who come down out of their own personal time to share with us. Jim has been down to the group that we do on Tuesdays now, not Wednesdays, but on Tuesdays. So there's room throughout the day. If anybody has time during their day, like spare time, and they have a gift, something that they've always loved to do, and the kids are grown now and they don't care about it anymore, come on down. I guarantee you that you'll change somebody's life. Maybe not with the thing that you do, but the time that you spend there will absolutely change somebody's life. And I'll be happy to see you. I'm there 6:30 to 2:30, Monday through Friday, and I am always running around there happy to change somebody's life. I invite you all to come down and do the same thing. I just want to tell you that I am afraid to death of speaking in front of people that I don't know. Did you get it at all? No. I'm scared to death every time. Butterflies in the stomach, sweaty palms. My head's telling me you sound like the parents on Peanut. Mom, 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 mom. They don't understand you. They're just being nice and they're sitting through it. My head tells me that every time. You know what I mean? And it always says you don't have anything to say. They don't really care. But it's all a bunch of lies. But I can tell you this. I'm sure you know how to cook. I'm sure you know how to cook. It doesn't matter what it is. For me, I believe that it's the love that you feel. It's whatever that thing is that you said, I'm going to do this for these people that are out of the cold. And whatever you fill in is going to nurture me. It doesn't matter. Even if you screw it up. You're going to nurture me, whatever it is. So if you like to bake, say, hey, you know what? I'm going to come down and I'm going to show people. I'm going to take an hour and I'm going to come down. We're just going to bake. I'm going to show people from beginning to end, and the butter, the measure, and even how to pick out the right ingredients when you go to the supermarket. You know, we need shopping lessons. Some people only know how to buy ramen noodles and frozen pizza. So I know that you know how to shop, you know how to provide for a family, you know how to do those things. So it's just the tiniest things that insignificant to us. We do it every day. It's like blinking our eyes. But for someone who's been misplaced or unhoused for any substantial amount of time, has forgotten even the smallest of things, even the tiniest of things make the biggest difference. Somebody showed up a week ago or so with just boxes and boxes of dental hygienic products, floss, toothbrush, toothpaste. So many people have forgotten just brush your teeth in the morning before you come up and say good morning and ask for something. You know what I mean? So just the smallest things make the hugest impact. So I invite you, just whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And as far as talking to people, I guarantee you come in with your coffee and you say, hi, my name's Susan, and I just come down to hang out for an hour and volunteer. That's probably all you'll have to say for that conversation, because they'll be like, oh my God, like, my name's Lee, and the reason I got here, they'll believe me. The conversation takes on a mind of its own, and I mean, I can see from both sides of it, but I can tell you that I've been on the receiving end of a person who I know they probably, first of all, were probably nervous to even talk to me because I wasn't very approachable. I wasn't a likable person. I'm not the handsome, clean guy that you see now. I didn't smell very good. I didn't speak very well. I didn't care at all. I was very unapproachable. So I've been on the other side, but then I've been on the side where I've taken that risk and I've talked to this person that I didn't think I'd have anything in common with, and I've been blessed every time. I walked away thinking like, imagine if I hadn't said hi to that lady because I thought she was, didn't want to, So every time I've gotten way more from the conversation than I thought I was supposed to be bringing to them. Like, oh, let me talk to this person to help them. I walked away with the bigger heart every time. So Don't worry about the conversation. Yeah, you won't have to worry about that at all. Yeah, it'll take a mind of its own. Jim probably can attest to it. You know, you just have to say hi. You say hi and the rest is taken care of. But yeah, we love Millie. Yes, Millie's been there many, many times. So, whatever it is that you think you can do, just show up, And if you ever get lost, usually between 6:30 and 2:30, I'm there. So, I'm always around. People have come in to serve the meal, and, they get there and they're like, okay, what? What do we do? And at that time I was working later, so, I'd pop in, and there's always a staff member around, though, to, like, kind of navigate the waters and, show you who's maybe a little bit more approachable than someone else, but you never felt like you're to the wolves. And I think, personally, I think that the spirit that flows through out of the cold just kind of takes over. It knows why you're there, and it knows who to send you to, and you know what I mean? I just feel that, but that's just my own stuff, I just, I just think that everybody who walks through that door touches my heart, and like Karen and Jeff, you know what I mean? Like, and their son Kyle, from the moment they walked in, you know what I mean? From the absolute moment, they touched my heart. Jim, you too, you know what I mean? Just so when you show up, you'll know what to do. I think it's just my own stuff. I just, I appreciate the question, and I know you'll know what to do when you're there. That's a really good question, and it's not. There's no black and white. There's no blanket, thing that happens. I think it's all gauged more on how passionate you are about the thing that you're coming to do. I think is the main thing. We get many, many different people at various stages of their lives. You know what I mean? And sometimes it doesn't matter where they are. It's the passion that you brought. And whatever you're doing, even if it's playing a banjo, and I hate the sound of banjos. I don't even know why I chose banjo just now, but anyway, you could be playing a banjo, you know what I mean? But because I'm in the worst stage of my life, you come along with this ridiculous, God-forsaken sound, but it takes me out of my stuff for a moment. You know what I mean? It gives me a chance to forget about the plight of my life. And here, let me just listen to this screeching sound down the chalkboard. I'm kidding, but I'm just saying, you know what I mean? So it's the passion. It's your passion that you bring. I mean, I like to uplift people. That's my passion. I like when a person feels completely helpless and they feel like they have absolutely nobody and no answers. I like to be the person that they felt like, whew, I'm glad I talked to you, Lee, man, because, whew, gosh, I had nowhere to go. I had no idea what I was going to do. I don't know what it is about that for me, but, you know what I mean, I guess because there was a person that I said it to and it changed my life, so I like to be available with the one thing that helps a person do something other than they were used to doing that caused them harm. So that's where my passion is. Whatever your passion is, hope it's not a banjo. Okay. But another thing, so we have large groups that come in from time to time. We have like sororities or fraternities or large church groups. The youth will come in and they'll want to do stuff. And we put them to work. We do housework, you know what I mean? We clean the building, top to bottom. It's not a very popular one, but we also get regular, normal volunteers, but then we get people who, through bad choices, the courts have stipulated that they owe some community service hours. So they'll have to come in and clean, you know, to pay their debts to society. And then we get sororities, and this really blew my mind. Sororities and fraternities have made it part of the pledge that they volunteer somewhere. Did you know that? This was one of those things. I think about, first of all, I think of when I was 20. You know, in my 20s, I was absolutely not thinking about other people, you know, doing good for other people. And then when I was in school, I had to go to school later on in life. I had to pay for it myself and work and all of that stuff while I went to school. But even then, I didn't have any volunteer hours. I didn't have any free time. And if I did, I certainly wasn't thinking about giving it away to anybody else other than myself. So it just blew my mind, and it blows my mind every day to think young people even consider anything like that. You know, it's, wow. You know, you hear old people like me say, these young kids today, they don't know. But I see the complete opposite on a daily basis. Young kids just carrying it, you know. So it reignites a little bit of hope in humanity for me to see that. That's a good question. So every guest is required to wash, dry, and put away whatever dish that they use. So it used to be, when we first remodeled and reopened the building, we had a dish and everything included with the dish that was assigned to each bunk. So bunk number 1 had a blanket, fitted sheet, pillowcase, also a little container or area to store things, also a plate, a fork, a knife, a spoon, a cup, the whole 9 yards. Everything was connected to bunk 1 throughout bunk 22. Well, of course, along the way, cup 2 gets missing, cup 19 gets missing. So we do away with that. So now we just, and it used to also, after that, the dishes used to be assigned to just one person. So it was a daily chore, and one person was responsible for making sure that the dishes were clean. That didn't work out too well either. So now it has morphed into every guest is responsible for their own dish. So ideally, how it's supposed to look when you walk into the kitchen is a clear counter, clean sink, clear counter with maybe 1 or 2 coffee makers up there. From time to time, you may see dishes lying on top of a towel to dry, which is a no-no. That'll get lead barking because that's not supposed to be there. People are supposed to just dry their dish and put it back. As soon as they got done eating, wash it, dry it, put it back. That's generally how it goes. Now, if, say for instance yourselves, you come in and the dish that you brought, you may need to warm it up, or you may have brought it in your actual dish that you intend to take back with you. Most times, at least when I was working in the evenings, I would just make sure that whoever was responsible for helping put the leftovers away would make sure that your dish got cleaned and it was taken care of. Some people would just leave their dish and come back and pick it up another day. So again, a guest will be responsible for making sure that it got clean, given back to staff, and we hold on to it until you come back and get it.